Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so today's topic is generational gaps. It started out as a conversation about between me and my daughter. And we were talking about it started out with talking about parenting and like the way that we parent today as opposed to the way that we parented when I was a kid, right?
Right.
Like, for example, kids drinking out of a hose.
Yeah.
Kids not wearing helmets when they're riding bicycles, right? Kids in the car seats, in no car seats in the car.
Yeah, that's what my mom said.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, all of this that we didn't do as parenting, that people didn't do as parenting when we were kids, that now, like, all of that is, like, restricted, right? Like, everything, well, feel I'm there with you, sweetheart. Okay, thank you. So all of these things that we allowed, like, back in my day, right, when I was a kid, that we don't allow today, right? Like, we don't really let kids drink out of hoses anymore. Like, they do, but we don't really, let them.
The water's different.
Yeah, like when they're not allowed to ride bikes without helmets, right? Or even roller skate.
Very true.
Right? So, like, but the question is did those things that we changed in our kids, like, did it change the dynamic of the kids today and cause a generational gap?
I just think the kids are a lot different because of technology. So, yes. I think it did. Once technology was brought in, it was a whole different way of living and learning and everything like that.
Yeah.
People are just, that's what it is now, technology. Like my son right now, he's been on the tablet and the computer all day today. I wouldn't have done that.
Enjoy, Eva.
What's that?
We didn't have that luxury when I was a kid, like computer and a TV and society has caused that generational gap as far as.
But do you think that any of these other things have anything to do with it? Did you guys catch the question?
Not quite. If you could kindly repeat the question, that would be highly appreciated. So therefore, I could try and answer to the best of my ability.
Absolutely. Okay, so the question is basically, the conversation started between me and my daughter about generational gaps, okay? And my daughter brought up something having to do with, like, the way that I was brought up, right? Like, we didn't have helmets riding bikes. We didn't have, we were allowed to drink out of hoses. We had no car seats. We had no car seats in the cars, right? Like, these kind of things have been altered for today's kids, right? Do you think that these things changing had a part of the changing the dynamic of today's society causing a generational gap?
Yes,
a generational
Actually, I feel that there is a generation gap, and it's a major generation gap. Like, if you actually look at it, from how we grew up with basically less rules, but more higher discipline line. Like, for example, in our generation, we, how should I say this?
We knew
I'm
right
just
from
trying to
wrong.
think. Exactly, thank you.
Okay.
And that's right. We knew more. We knew more from right and wrong, and our discipline level was actually more higher. Right. Give me a second. My dad's calling me. 1 sec. I'll be right back.
We
Go
were
ahead,
more
Miss Janet.
self-disciplined.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
We were more self-disciplined. Like, both our parents worked. We knew we had to come home, get the homework done, straighten up, do our chores, and when we screwed up, we got a spanking.
Or grounded.
or grounded. And I think when it became that's abuse, everything changed.
Right.
Yes.
Because now you got these parents that are afraid to spank their children.
My daughter called them helicopter parents.
Helicopter parents?
Yeah, she's basically, her explanation of it was because you have those parents who basically hover over their kids like helicopters. Kids never got the choice to learn from their actions, right?
Okay.
Because they were always very quickly, caught or grabbed or stopped or not allowed to do something, right?
Yes.
And so she said, like, basically like a helicopter, it was watching the every move. And because of that, kids didn't get to make mistakes. Mistakes never happened. Therefore, there was nothing to learn from and nothing to rectify.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
there was nothing to self-discipline because they never got to make the mistakes.
Yeah, I can see that.
What do you think, Dictator? Oh, right when she pushes mute.
Brennan, I
My
need
kid
you
was
home by 4:25 so we can leave for dinner.
Yeah, so
okay.
Do you think that means that like that causes a generational gap between like you and what you were raised as?
See, I was raised by, my parents are hippies. So I didn't have a lot of rules growing up. Just be home at a certain time and call if I was going to be late kind of thing. But a lot of my friends, they were like restricted, like 11 p.m. curfew, in trouble a lot, and things like that. So I don't know. I don't really, like, I instill rules on my children, and I expect them to have manners at all times when dealing with other people and things like that. But I'm a very lenient mom. So I don't know how my kids are going to be 15 years from now. Because I don't want to get them in trouble all the time, because I feel like I'd be yelling at them all the time if that was the case.
And growing up, my house, my mom's house, was the house to be at.
Coach.
Because they weren't home most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But we did what we had to do. And
Right.
then when my mom got home, then we would go out into the neighborhood.
Those were latchkey kids, right?
Yes.
Hey, Pandora's Box. Welcome. Yes, Coach.
Hi, Coach.
No, I'm just saying hi to Pandora's Box and everybody else. I didn't want to talk. I'm still getting used to the boxes and stuff. I don't like talking over people, so I wait.
That's fine. Did you hear any of the conversation beforehand? The questions?
Nope. I literally was just scrolling and I said, oh, let me jump in. I'm having my after work coffee. I haven't even gone home yet.
Awesome. Okay, well, let me give it to you really quick. So basically, the conversation started between me and my daughter, and the conversation was based off of generational gaps caused by certain things, right? And what she said to me was the reason why she believes that generational gaps are happening today is because of the difference in the parenting styles when it comes to, taking care of your child, right? What she called helicopter parents. And I said, well, can you explain that to me? And she said, well, in comparison to what you were allowed to do, such as drinking out of hoses, right? Not wearing helmets when you're outside playing, riding your bike or roller skating, right? Things like car seats in a car, like you just got to sit in the car and enjoy the ride, right? And basically saying like where helicopter parents came in, it was constantly evaluating, constantly watching, constantly protecting, always making sure that no mistake was allowed to be made, right?
Okay.
So the question is, did these changes in parenting alter the dynamic of today's society, therefore causing a generational gap?
Yeah, definitely. Times are way different. It's definitely changed. The reason it changed, The reason it changed, I mean, I don't know if this is like a conspiracy theory or anything, but I definitely believe that the political the politicalness in the world, the media in the world, and everything, they control the mind frame that we're in on this planet, and they put us in certain mind frames that have us believing in certain things just by watching it constantly, hearing about it constantly, and it just changes people's perspective on things. Our perspectives have changed over the years, not necessarily based on fact or experience, but just based on what we're seeing and what we're being programmed to see every day.
Right.
You know.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing?
Happy birthday, love. Thanks for coming in the live.
No problem. I'll stop by for a quick second while I put this phone on the charger.
Okay. Actually, I'd love to hear your point of view on this.
What we talking?
What we're talking about is basically, okay, so again, let me reiterate again. So basically a conversation started between me and my daughter, and she was saying that that generational gaps she believes is caused by things such as simple as the difference in parenting from back when I was a kid to what parenting looked like now, right? What she compared to as helicopter parenting. And her comparisons were things like, being able to drink out of a hose when you're outside playing, not having to wear a helmet when you're running around, not having a car seat in your car when you're, riding around in the car with your parents. Like, mistakes were able to be made where helicopter parenting became like the norm, right? It was make sure nothing's happening, make sure they're okay, make sure they're safe. Oh, before it happens, stop it from happening. So mistakes weren't be able to be made by a child to learn from, right? So the question is, did changing these things, like did changing the way the parenting was happening, did they alter the dynamic of today's society until causing a generational gap?
Well, I was listening to what Coach was saying when I first walked in here. He has good points on what he was saying. I think one of the big problems and something that I actually put a lot of work and study into is just the mindset of what our grandparents, parents, like millennials versus Gen X's versus baby boomers, and then you got the new generation now. What they are, a lot of the times we project what we've learned over a period of time. So it's like if you hurt yourself as a kid, you think that your kid will be okay when they hurt themselves.
Right.
I'll do the same thing when we follow the same patterns. And everybody's not the same. I think that's one of the biggest problems is that we have a lot of that, how can I say
assumption.
Not assumptions, but like it's projection. Like what
Okay.
you've been through is what you think everybody else should be able to handle too. So that's
Right.
the biggest thing. And your daughter I love the conversation that she wanted to have as far as that, because we might have been safe kids when we was younger, but these kids aren't built the same. So it's like, I can't say, oh, y'all not built like this. Y'all be all right. Fall and hit the ground 50 times. Now, you do got to learn your lesson in life, yeah, but if you could prevent something that could have been catastrophic for you, why would you want your kid to go through that just to say, oh, I've been through this before,
Right.
Like, people have to change with the times. Bring you to the dance, but also understand that once you stop learning, you're technically killing yourself.
Right.
Because there's a reason why, and I don't know how old everybody is, there's a reason why y'all sitting on your cell phones right now. If you really wanted to be technical in how people do, people of older generation wouldn't be on these cell phones. They obviously like it because it's something that they didn't have, something that I didn't have as a kid growing up. We didn't have cell phones. I remember the old phones and stuff, playing and Atari and all that other stuff. I remember having where they got online play, they got all this other stuff. They can do so much more. We can sit here and all video chat with each other and stuff. So we've changed with it, but it's all choice. You see how we choose what we want out of the newer generation or what we don't want.
Right.
Like, a lot of us don't want the drama of the new generation with social media. but we don't mind being on it. You know what I mean? Like it's more or less like you got to take it. You got to take it and learn with it. Like the same way you expect everybody to learn of your past, it's the same way everybody need to learn of the future.
So do you think that, like, with that way of thinking, right, like you got to keep rolling with the tide, do you think that because, like, my generation, right, like my, not so much me but my parents generation, the way that they thought, right, was like you said, you know, you sometimes you have to fall to learn how to get back up, right? So do you think that the way that they think, as instead of rolling with it, is assisting the lack of the generational connection?
Yeah, because they haven't learned to say you don't have to fall the way that I fell just to learn it. But
Yeah.
that's not being said. What's being said is learn it the way I learned. You gotta think all that stuff. Like, yeah, we got problems with kids in the world, especially younger generation, when it comes to like murders and thievery and stuff. But they're free spirited, so a lot of them are doing things that you didn't have opportunity to do. A lot of parents aren't paying them that much attention. You know what I mean? Like, so I believe that you can imply things of what happened in your generation, but also learn about theirs too. Because my daughter don't have to run into a wall to learn her lessons. I'm gonna stop her.
Right.
You know?
But do you think that because of that, like, and not speaking of you personally, but other parents, right? Like in general, do you think that that also makes it like where mistakes are like are rarely tolerated?
Mm, no, I think it's just. I think it's more or less like it's just going to happen. The nature of humans is going. You're going to make mistakes, so it's nothing that we could do about it. It's just
Yeah.
that it's the level of the mistake at this point now. Like a lot of stuff has more microscope on it now. Like whereas, like I said, as opposed to what all of us had growing up, we didn't have a microscope. You had to figure it out through the grapevine, through TV, like he said, through TV and through media and all this other stuff. That's how you figured your information out. It was think about like this, right? And I don't mean to take it this far, but all the people that are missing in the world, we only knew they were missing because of the media. Now, when you look at now in today's generation, there's so much more information about this now that you be like, God, this many people are missing? Like, yeah.
Right. Like when I was a kid, it was only the people on milk cartons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or the people that was in your neighborhood, you knew a lot about them, but you didn't know what was happening in Detroit. You didn't know what was happening in Florida and Pennsylvania's and Delaware's and Georgia and all. You didn't know all that stuff. Now, since social media is here, one post light a whole entire internet up, and you're going to know just because of that one post. It's going to spread like wildfire.
Right.
So we just got to evolve with it because this is the age of technology. We
Right.
can never go back to what we have, even though it looks good. I love it. Like I love watching '80s movies and that retroness of it. But even the fact that I got the brain capacity to say, "Damn, if I went back and lived in the '80s, how would I survive?" Because
Right.
you know now. How would
Right.
you? You got to go back to all the roots of everything. You got to go back to using a map. You got to go back to, the secrecies of things. You got to go back to, everything is so basic. It's off of paper or old computers. Like those type of things is what you would have to rely on. We have everything now, so it's like grow with it, and if we all grow together with it, we can teach the generation a better way of what we dealt with. We just because we think it was better for us, that don't mean that it was. A lot of us still
Right.
deal with trauma that you could probably sit back and go back and think about, and you'll treat it as, oh, that was a good lesson. No, 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 that probably wasn't. You're just treating it as such because it was told to you that way.
Right. You actually went into my next question. It was how much of a gap did technology cause? Like, is it just as simple as we'll learn the technology?
No. And then on top of that, it's not even a gap. The gap is the person that doesn't want to learn. That's where the gap starts. The gap person don't want to learn, and that this person is moving on with their lives and learning, and you're still.
I
If you're
disagree
here,
with Mike right there
mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Janet.
Go ahead. I'm
because
what you talking.
I'm I'm at the point where I was where computers just first started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So I understood it, but like anybody older than me
Didn't
would
care.
not understand or grasp the idea of computers. I know that the babies that I raise, their granny doesn't understand the computer at all, or even working her cell phone. She doesn't get it. And
Mm-hmm.
she's 20 years, 15 years older than me. So she struggles with electronics, but she's tried. She just doesn't get it. I was right on that border.
Pandora Box says that's simple though. We rely on technology too much that if we lost all the technology, there goes the commune and bank accounts. Does anybody want to touch on that?
I agree. Growing up, I had everybody's phone number in my head. Now
Right.
everything's in the phone. You lost your
Nice.
phone. You could not dial your mother's phone number at all.
Facts.
Nope.
Yeah, I remember one time my daughter, my brother was supposed to be watching my daughter in the store with us, right? And all of a sudden you see my brother run by and there's no child. He says, is Alexis with you? And all of our faces just went, what?
Mm-mm-mm.
And all of a sudden he books it down, running down the aisle, and you hear over the loudspeaker, is someone missing their daughter, Alexis? She says that she can't find mommy and daddy. We get to the front and they said to us, we asked her your names and she didn't know. We asked for her your phone number and she didn't know. And we realized we had totally not parented that part of it. In kindergarten, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, we were literally taught our parents' names, their phone numbers, and our address. By the time we were 5, we had that memorized. But for our children, for my children, that did not happen. They didn't give you any memorization of who your parents were or how to contact them if you were separated from them.
When I was younger, if we used to go on vacations or go to like a theme park or something like that, my parents used to put a piece of paper in my pocket with their information on it in case I got separated.
Right.
Nice.
Right. But touching on that is right there with the whole, the memorization. Like we didn't do the memorization because it wasn't needed. We had cell phones, right? So it wasn't really a thought process of, I need to teach my child these things just in case, because it became so natural to rely on the cell phone as opposed to relying on your memory. Right?
Now,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Michael.
So let's take that instance, right? I do that with my daughter, where I understand that she's a technology kid, right? Now, me remembering stuff, I make my daughter remember. That's a part of being a vigilant parent. But remember when I was saying, like, how we learn with the times is what matters. Let's think about this, right? I don't know if anybody in here is religious, so I try not to touch on this, but I want to try to make sense of this.
No, that's fine.
If anybody still refers to the Bible, and it doesn't even coincide with today's generation. The Bible and today's generation don't even go together. The things that's said in the Bible, if it's supposed to be in the 1800s, what is it doing in the generation of now? You got to think about that. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, we can piece things together and put it together and say, oh, well, these things make sense why it exists. Okay, that's fine. But just like you said, the fact that we relied on the cell phone should do one thing, is the reverse of if somebody relied on something in a book that's really old to rely on the generation now. It would not work.
Right.
Because that's not how things are. Like everything progresses and moves forward. If one thing is going to happen, we're always going to have a future, regardless if we're here or not. Because if you believe in certain things, like life is life, but life also has different forms. It's not just humans. The earth is a living thing. If the earth decides it wants to go, it's going to go, and it's going to become something different.
Right.
You know, like, so that's the things that we just got to remember that while we're here, that the earth is growing with us, it's changing with us, it's doing everything with us. We have to change just like how the earth changed. So if you remember, like what you were saying about your kid being lost, and she didn't know numbers, she didn't know anything, that's because you became a part of the new generation, but you didn't bring the things that you did learn with you.
Right.
You kind of overskipped that. Not wrong with it. You just did your thing, but it's
right.
like we got excited with what we have now.
I mean, it's a part of history, right? Like with everything with history, once it turns out that, okay, well, hey, it's repeating, you now realize, okay, well, this was the reason why I knew that before, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we just had to evolve. The biggest thing we can do as humans is evolve. If we don't evolve, we don't become better. And it's not even the same back. It's so many problems with the world that we got to deal with. Like, and it's like, when do we as humans decide to open up our mind and understand each other the right way? You know, like, what is the right way? You know, if we have children, let's train the children how to become better than us. Like, I never want my child to be me. My daughter cannot be me. I created an individual. I didn't create version 2, Mike. It's just not going to work. You know, like, she's going to be who she's going to be. So I could just show her the little things, and if she likes it, she likes it. If she don't, hey, can't do nothing about that. She has to find her own path.
My son once said to me, "Mom, I'm going to be smarter than you one day." And I said, I legit responded to him and said, "Well, good, because if you are not smarter than me, I didn't do my job right."
Yes, exactly.
I didn't make you to be me. I made you to be you.
Exactly. And that's the thing right there. Like, when everybody's teaching their kids the things and how we progress in life, and the generational gaps only happen, like I said, is because somebody refuses to learn the future.
Right.
They love where they came from, and they'll keep it just as that. And it becomes a shallow thing. That's why we deal with so many problems in this world. That's why the race wars and all that other stuff is still happening because of that. And it's like, it's unnecessary. When you really sit back and just do 2 + 2 and realize that it is 4, you realize how dumb certain things really are. You realize how dumb they really are. And it's the reason why it's a battle between certain things. Like, and it's like, it don't have to be.
Right.
People are doing it because of stubbornness. People are doing it because of choice. People are doing it because of learned behaviors.
Right.
And they refuse to let them. They refuse to become who you really want to be, who you really should have been. You people should have been a moving forward type of person where, like, hey, I love doing this. I love doing that. I love traveling and going through mountains and seeing greenery behind the world. But no, you get limited to, hey, stay here, do this, feel this way, and that's how we move on with our lives.
Yeah.
We
so
don't
basically, like you're saying, like, and I mean, on top of the fact of just the old school regular, parenting, the simplicity of it, you also think that it has to do with, like, oh, what's the word? Like you were saying right now, right?
Hey, Tammy,
do this and this is the outcome. Do this and this is going to be your outcome. Like, giving the constant direction, like, that also takes part in it, right? But, like, does that roll with the whole, like, the rapid changing society? Like, does that fit into the same category?
Yeah, because okay, so I have a theory about life, and when it comes to me and my date life, all that stuff.
Okay.
You have to have the trinity of you, right? The trinity is, you have to be mentally, emotionally, and physically okay, or at least good, for me to deal with you. And it's not that I'm saying I need somebody to be in tip-top shape or something. I just need you to understand that without one, the other suffer.
There's multi-levels of me, not just one. Right.
Yes. So if your mindset is messed up, guess what you're not going to do? Let's say if you wanted to, most people, when they're going through changes, the one thing they want to change is their body, right?
Right.
So, and I don't mean like you need to go get tip-top shape. It just means you want to just feel healthy. if your mindset isn't right, your motivation for your body isn't going to be right either, because you're going to half-ass yourself.
Right.
And on top of that, you're not going to, and emotionally, anything can bother you.
Right.
Because somebody can take you off your
and
square.
nothing's going to be good enough.
And nothing's going to be good enough.
Right.
That's my point behind why I feel like the world has to do a particular thing, because it has to go with it. It has to go, you have to move with it. That means you got to understand that it's going to bring problems and deal with it and be strong through it. You got to understand that financially you might go through up and downs, so you got to go with it.
So do you think that that's part of it too? Like, could that also be a part of why the generational gap has become so big, is because of the fact that people don't want to have to deal with the problem of the situation?
Yep. It's 100%. Nobody wants to deal with consequences. Accountability is everything in this world. This America itself is a great country, but there's not enough accountability. When you really sit back and think about it, I'm not thinking as me being black mixed with white and all this other stuff that I'm the only person suffering through problems. I'm thinking at it as everyone is going through something. Everyone is dealing with something. So everyone has their difference in opinions and everybody has the way that they feel, and it's completely understandable, but we don't move as a unit.
Right. So how do we get generations to come together in basically understanding like relations in this day, like not just dating relations, but relations, like, I mean, for instance, okay, there's a new TV show called Generation Gap, right? And what I find interesting about it is that on the show, to basically show the generational gap, they use a grandchild and a grandparent as the partners, right?
Nice. Okay.
And majority of the time on the show, like, you see like these, you know, the kid knows something from the grandparents era, and the grandparent doesn't know it. The grandparent is just so proud, right? And then when it happens vice versa, the child is so proud, right? So obviously it's meaningful to us that we do understand each other. Right?
Yeah.
So
I got something on
how
that.
do you get
Go ahead. You got it, bro.
How do you get the gap to become like an understanding relationship in this day and age?
It's 100% on the older generation, the one who was not raised in the new technology, because I think we're agreeing that technology is somewhat responsible for the gap within generations, right?
Yep.
So it's up to us. Like, TikTok ain't my generation, right? But I saw my kids doing it and everything, and I said, I want to connect with my kids and I want to be on their level. So let me get on TikTok and see what it's all about. So my daughter comes on here, she battles with me, and we have fun and stuff like that. Now that's on us to do that. So it's either we're gonna be like, okay, we're gonna learn what's going on so we could connect, or we're just gonna say, oh, I ain't learning that. That's for the young crowd, and then we're just gonna be lonely for the rest of our lives. Do you know what I mean? It's totally on us. We can't put that responsibility in the hands of the younger generation,
right?
Because they're the ones that are being raised into this, and then it'll teach them that when they get older and their kids and grandkids have new stuff, that we want them to be and do what we did, so they can have that stronger family bond.
Right. So what kind of thing do you think it is that stops, like, I mean, like baby boomers, right? Like, what kind of thing do you think stops them from trying to move forward into this generation, like trying to close that gap?
It's just laziness,
It's laziness, yeah.
You know, it's just laziness. I mean,
and
it's probably other things, but
I mean,
that's the first thing that comes to me.
Could it be more?
You can't blame the baby boomers in a way, though. They did their job with their kids. It's our mothers and fathers. That's the ones I'm worried about. Now, baby boomers have a responsibility to how you are keeping the needle moving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I said, I think with baby boomers and Gen X's is about accountability at this point. Do you understand what happened in your lifetime? Even though you lived your life, can you not judge this generation and understand? Like I always feel like when people judge generations, it's because you stopped looking at something. You thought that things were so great for you, but go look at your generation and see what happened. Pay
Right.
attention to your generation and see what I look at my generation and say, okay, I know what happened in mine.
Right.
That's why I'm changing things with my daughter. I know that I got my ass kicked as a kid, but guess what? I'm not going to do. I'm not going to kick my ass because it was a lesson learned from. And it's listen, believe me, I to anybody who is of, I am mixed with white. It is in me. I am not being any type of way with this. I think everybody understands when I say this. A lot of our stuff is learned behavior from generations ago.
Right.
So it has moved forward in different ways.
Right.
And it's not racism, not any of that stuff. It's more or less we've learned things
Right.
in
We learned the behavior.
teachings. We learned certain behaviors, like beating your child. This never has been a thing for me ever. I looked at my daughter one day and I had a belt, and I just said, I will never hit you with this, because I felt anger in me, and I was like, oh, I don't like the anger in me.
Right.
Why was I mad at her? Because she was learning life, and because she was mad, and because she felt some type of way. I'm stopping her from being a human. Now I do want to keep her in check, but I don't need to keep her in check when I put my hands on her. That's not keeping somebody in check. Because the same way you can hit your kid for doing stuff is the same way I should be able to hit a grown person if they're acting out of line. Just hit them. Just like, hey, calm down. Just start beating you with a belt. It don't make sense. It's like they just learned. You got to sit down and make them understand. Beating them with a belt is not going to make them understand. They're going to always feel like if I do something wrong, only consequence I get is hitting me.
Yeah.
Because they don't learn. Where's the lesson that's being taught? The lesson that's being taught is that I beat you behind. That's not a lesson. It's
actually kind of funny that you mentioned that, because well, first of all, you mentioned that like the baby boomers like they did. My parents were baby boomers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my dad never spanked me, but he spanked my brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was the troublemaker in the family,
okay.
right? So that it actually goes backwards for my family.
Mm-hmm. You just learn privilege.
Like I was the one who didn't learn anything, and my brothers were the ones that were well behaved, had the great grades. Like they were the ones that were accomplishing life, right? And so
you learn privilege, though.
It was a totally different. Yeah, it was a totally different experience because I literally was not taught like the boundaries, right? Just because I wasn't spanking, like I wasn't taught the rest of the boundaries. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you. You just like you said, you learn privilege, and privilege don't mean a bad thing. It just means that you learned something that was like, oh, I like this. I'm going to take advantage of it.
Right, exactly. And then you just kind of run with it. But the reason why I was bringing that up was because, like I was saying, like, is there other reasons? And my dad, being that he was a baby boomer, when he sees social media, he sees my identity being theft. He sees, pictures of me are going to be stolen, right? Like, people are going to see into my life where I don't want them to see into my life. Like it becomes even deeper where like now because of that, he doesn't have the kind of relationship with my children that he does with like the ones that live with them.
I gotta step out for a minute.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
okay, Miss Janet.
You know what it is? You can actually teach them. That's the fun part. Is you can teach them now. You know what I mean? Coach, if he got older parents, he can teach them. Me, I can teach my mom certain things. Yeah. I sit back with my mom and sometimes teach her about TikTok, and now she loves TikTok.
Yeah.
Because it's a matter of it's an ignorance. It's not a bad thing. It's an ignorance because they don't understand it.
Right.
They just don't understand it. That's all. They like, oh, this is evil. Yeah, because like Coach said when I walked in here, media will teach you that everything is evil.
So Tammy says your dad hasn't kept up with the times. When it comes to everything else in life, my dad has an iMac computer. He emails, he text messages, he does everything, right? But social media, he just won't go near because to him, like everything can be stolen. And it's funny because I'm the type of person that says everything is right here. If you want it, just let me know. Because in reality, we know that in today's generation, you can literally know my name and find everything on me.
Yeah.
Right? There really is nothing that you can hide on social media. Like, period. On the internet. Period.
The internet.
Well, I'm on here.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I'm on here knowing that. Like, I will never
Right.
say, do, share anything on social media that I wouldn't want shared with the world.
Exactly.
Like, if it's something that I would be like, no, I don't want so and so to see that or hear that, I won't put it on social media. I've had so many conversations on this app right here that I could have enlightened people and helped people a little bit more if I was 100% with everything about the stories I've told, but I can't and I won't, you know.
Right.
So we have to have a responsibility of that on here too. And we all know by now. We all know that whatever, like, you do something on social media, could come back to bite you. So it's on you. I mean, if you mess up and you do something stupid or say something stupid, that's on you.
Right. Well,
It's
Tammy
true.
says older people can be that way, a little paranoid of social media. Does anybody want to touch that?
Well,
Uh,
my
yeah.
father's like almost 80 years old. I don't connect with him much. He lives right next to me, like in the town over, and I'm currently like loving him from a distance because of
Yeah.
some of his things that some of his ways I don't
His
agree with
choices.
when it comes to my daughter. Um, so I love him because he's my dad, but I love him from a distance. I don't make an effort to call him. You know, if he calls me, I'll answer the phone. I don't tell him I hate him or nothing like that because I don't. He's my dad, right?
Right.
But he messaged me the other day. What are you doing on TikTok? I'm like, what are you talking about? How do you even know? He downloaded TikTok and started watching it, and he came across me, like a couple of my videos and stuff from another account I used to have.
How funny. So
Yeah,
basically he chose to, like, he closed the gap on his own.
yeah. Exactly. I didn't influence him. I didn't say nothing. Somehow, for some reason, he decided to download TikTok, and then he found me, and then he called me, and we've spoken about 3 times since then, all about TikTok.
Interesting.
Yeah, but still, that don't mean I'm still not gonna love him from a distance, because that's my
Right.
choice.
Right. So,
I think he's trying to find a way to connect with me, but he
I,
made mistakes that it's hard for me to forgive.
understandable. I understand. We've had the discussion before, so I totally understand what you're saying. Um,
Yeah,
when it comes to generational gap, does music have anything to do with it?
Mm,
I don't think
nah,
so.
nah.
I think
That's just
music
choice.
helps. I think
Music does
music
help.
helps. I
There's
see a
things
Well,
lot of
I
young
accept.
want to
generation embracing older music.
Yeah.
let me bring that to a different direction on that. Okay, so music, let's say back in the 1950s, right? Music was, oh goodness, uh, think about Grease, the movie Grease, right?
Yeah,
And you got Grease Lightning. Do you guys know the song Grease Lightning?
yeah. Go grease lightning. Yeah.
Yes. What was Grease Lightning referring to?
Hi, Paulette. What was it referring to?
Right.
Was it drugs or something like that? I heard
Grease
something about
Lightning
that.
was a sexual connotation song.
Sexual. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, you didn't say things direct. There was all subliminal. Every message in a song was subliminal, right?
Yeah.
Then you got to, let's just jump forward to the 90s, right? Where it became a little bit less subliminal, right?
Mm-hmm.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard.
No, it's still
A little
subliminal.
subliminal, right? But then you
It's
get
it's
into the lyrics and it's not so subliminal, right? And then you get into the generation now where we have no subliminal messages. Now it's just
no.
straight up,
I think.
get over here, I'm gonna
I,
do you. Does the way that music transitioned have anything to do with a generational gap?
no. I'm gonna stick to that. No, because I believe that music is like such a different thing, like, that brings people together no matter what generation it's from. I see people from all different generations listening to music from all generations. If anything, I think it has the opposite effect, and I think it works against the gap, and it erases the gap in some ways.
Hmm. Hello, Mr. Shaw is here.
Hey, what's
Hello.
going on?
Hi,
Hello.
What's
I'm
Paulette.
actually Queen. I'm about to back out because I'm about to start my little streaming stuff.
Okay, Mike. Happy birthday again.
Listen,
Everybody
thank
make sure
y'all
you
so
say
much.
happy birthday to Mike.
Happy
And
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
coming in
Thanks,
love.
man. Thanks, man. Yep. And
Happy
I will
birthday.
talk to you soon. Yeah, thanks, man. Yep.
Okay.
I will
All
talk
right.
to y'all.
Okay. Bye, hen.
I have an echo.
Okay.
Wait, not anymore. I don't. Not anymore. I don't.
Okay.
It's gone.
Okay. So, Shaw, did you hear any of that?
I heard some of it.
Okay. Do you have any opinion on it?
What was the topic?
Well, we're talking about generational gaps, right? And so we went over everything, talking about how basically it narrowed down to technology and the fear of technology being why most generational gaps are happening. But now we're like in the comparison of music. Did music have anything to do with the subliminal gap because of the fact of it going from subliminal to, I mean, no other word for it, like vulgar, I guess, like just straightforward.
I don't think it's a gap. I think it's just, I don't want to use the word evolving. I think they're continuing it. It's just being approached differently. Like before, like there was subliminal, because think in the past on how when people used to talk, the way they talked when it came down to sex, they really wasn't putting it out there like that. As of all the way up to now, they just putting it out there. Um, so I say it still continue. It's just being more direct, and who knows? By the way, it keeps going there later on throughout the future. Maybe it might just go back to subliminally. Who knows? Depending on how everybody takes it.
Okay, Coach, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. I didn't want to cut him off while he was talking. That's why I typed it.
Thank you for being respectful. That's very sweet of you.
Have a good night. Have a good day, everyone.
You
Have a
too,
good
Coach.
one.
All right.
So, Shal, can I ask you what do you think would be like the main reason for a generational gap?
I don't. To be completely honest, I will have no clue on that. Maybe because people are starting to speak up, or maybe people are taking things that was going on in the past and they want to put their own thoughts to it.
Mm-hmm.
That I have no idea. To be honest, I can't even think of a reason on what's causing a generational gap and stuff.
Yeah.
Because some of the areas where I'm at, majority of the people they still live by kind of the old school ways.
That's kind of what we were touching on earlier, was how because of the ways that things were taught, right, back when we were kids, it was a different mindset, right? Like it was a different like way of parenting. Like where I was a kid, it was, you can play outside, you weren't watched every 5 seconds. You were with your friends by yourself on the sidewalk. Your parents were nowhere to be found. You were able to make mistakes and learn from your mistakes and keep going. Where I feel like today's generation is the complete opposite. Like we're constantly watching, constantly making sure that things are done correctly, right? Like, does that have something to do with the generational gap?
That could be. It can be. There's many different variables on what could be a generational gap.
Right.
But I can't even say that some of the things is a generational gap. It's just continuing, but it's just being more expressed.
So do you even think that there's any such thing as a generational gap?
No, I think it is. I think as a with generational gap, it has to kind of go more into depth with it. You kind of got to go more into depth.
Yeah.
Because I'm willing to think that quite a few people are either confused what a generational gap is, or they have their own definitions of what a generational gap is. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think nobody would be wrong when it comes to what it is. I just think a lot of people will have their own interpretation of what it is,
Mm.
and it
I
can
never thought about
cause.
that before. Like that would make sense, right? Because for me, I think generational gap to me is more like um, the lack of understanding relationships, right? Like the lack of understanding what my parents went through and what I'm going through today.
Yeah, I got you on that. So I guess it just depends on what's everybody's interpretation of generational gap.
Yeah.
Because somebody could have, I mean, it could just be people is going to ask, well, generational gap as in what? On how we do things, the type of movies or stuff we listen to, things like that. So it just depends.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, right? Like if it depends on those specific things, like just those specific things, right?
Uh
Because
huh.
obviously it could be anything. Um, what would be how you close that gap?
Well, depending on the minds of the people, some gaps might not want to close it. They
Hmm.
probably just wanted to. They wanted to evolve.
Yeah.
You know, some gaps, depending on how important or what message you're trying to get out, you don't want to close it, but you do want it to evolve.
Right.
You don't. And it's like as of before, in the past when people wasn't really on sex out like that directly. Now look what it's doing is actually becoming direct. That's evolving.
Yeah.
Now at some point maybe you might want to go ahead and kind of close that gap because who knows it can evolve in a way that's good to actually spread the message on what's the pros and the cons with it. But it can also spread a message as of for some people it's taking it out of hand, and you got people want to grape. Well, pretty much do things that they shouldn't be doing. That's against the law that they should be doing. That contains to the word sex.
Right.
So it just depends on where it goes. It depends on when it go. It just depends on how it goes out.
Where you can close that
When
gap.
you can close it because everybody's not going to close the gap on throughout the same way. Some people can go further than others.
Yeah.
So it just depends on you.
So basically, like what I'm getting out of this conversation, like not just me and you, but everybody, is a generational gap doesn't necessarily mean just understanding of everybody's generation, right? It has more to do with it with parenting. It has more to do with the way that you have experienced life, right?
It has a lot to do with everything because your
Yeah.
generation you don't just learn from the like for instance older folks don't just I mean kids just don't learn from older folks. Older folks can learn things from kids too.
Right.
You know,
Right.
today's generation can learn something from last year's generation or the year before that and so forth. And I mean, there's things that I'm learning now with just this generation.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing that can kind of cause the gap is if people ain't willing to work with each other or learn from each other.
Yeah. You know what? Like, really quickly, I just want to say thank you for coming on, and thank you to everybody else who came on earlier during the live and sharing your experiences or your ideas of this of how to close a generational gap. I feel like a generational gap needs to be closed by understanding not so much of what everybody has just gone through, but most importantly, the similarities of what everybody goes through. Because I feel like the similarities is what's going to connect you to each other, right? It's going to make you realize, okay, we're not as different as we think we are. And
Exactly.
right. So for me, like that was really like the end game in all of this. But thank you for coming on. Oh my goodness, what's tomorrow's topic? Tomorrow's topic is what stops you from loving or bringing love closer to you. So I hope to see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. right here.
Oh, well, 3
And
p.m.
I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
3 p.m. I will
Thank you for
be
coming, shop. Thank you for coming.
no problem.
Okay.
Bye bye.